experience doing it, and he's building a portfolio in my backyard, I'm going to go ahead and get involved and make it happen and become one of him. And that's what I'm doing here, is all I'm doing is just duplicating myself. That's it. And that's pretty cool for me to just openly say, versus sitting here and just like mesmerizing you guys over numbers and talking about self-storage. And then at the end of the day, put a slide up and say, all right, this is the offer, because that's not what I do. I'm not selling anything here. I'm not going to sell you a used Hyundai. All right? Nothing wrong with a Hyundai. I guess it's an all right car. I've never driven in one. But I just want to make sure you guys get it clear that that's what it's about. Get to the ask. Understand that. Get to that no. Because if it's not a deal, it's not a deal, and it never will be a deal, because they won't budge unless time and circumstances changes and there becomes some motivation. So this is part of it, but it's not part of the 5 things that you need to know. I'm going to tell you the 5 things. I just told you 1. That's the ask. But there's something in between all of it that you will need to do your best job at. And that is to get working on figuring out the story. The story is the key to success. This is the key that'll unlock the vault. This is the key that finds out that motivation. Why would this person sell this property? Are you taking over a headache that cannot be cured? Are you taking over a property that's got issues? I just recently passed on another one that was outside of Gulfport. That's another project that I'm working on right now. And the guy owns 2. I passed on one. Why? Because it's in a flood zone, a floodplain, right? And because it's in a flood zone, it's too hard to get insurance. Well, the guy owns it free and clear. I don't know if that thing's insured or it's not. I know I'm not the huckleberry for that property out there in Mississippi. That one's one that I don't want to touch. Follow? And I get to it. So that's the story of why he's selling. And each deal has a story. Everyone's got a story. I told you my story. I was very upfront with you. I got a very strict no BS policy. That's why I'm here, why I was invited to speak 3 hours. Everybody else that's here is speaking like an hour. And that's just because I don't have any hidden motive other than to just duplicate myself. And I think that that's pretty cool too. So I'm very open. You guys got questions at any time, raise your hand. You want to grill me like an onion? Raise your hand. I'd like to do an open question and answer session at one point, even if it's for like 10 minutes after, before we're done at the 3 hours. Anybody want to do that, just in case? You guys got questions? Write your questions down. You can ask me at any time. You're not going to interrupt the flow. Like I said, I haven't done this in a while, but I know my flow. I know what I'm teaching you guys while I'm here. I do have a mission to teach you guys some great stuff. I guarantee that when you walk away from here, you'll learn more than any other mentorship or boot camp or course material that you've received. I haven't even hit the PowerPoint button yet. So we're going to zip through some of this stuff and we're going to be talking through it. But let me get through the 5 things, and guys, get to the story. There's a story on why you're here. I don't know your story yet. It'd take me a while to go, what's your story? What's your story? What's your story? What's your story? There's a lot of people here. So it's going to be difficult at the end of this session in 3 hours, because I'm going to run out and I'm going to go back to the Scott. Awesome place, man. They just renovated that whole place. You guys seen that place right down the street? Oh, it's a really nice venue. That's where I'm staying. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out on how we can engage and figure if you're a fit for me. The way I work with people, and this is not a sense of urgency. Again, it's just very, very straightforward. I mesh with people or I don't mesh with people. Either you're for me or you're not for me. Either you have a definitive plan of action and you're someone who says, I'm going to do this, and there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing it, or you're somebody that needs to think about it and get back to me next Thursday. Well, all those people that need to think about things, get back to me next Thursday, guess what? Thursday comes and goes, and then there's another Thursday, and nothing ever happens on Thursday. And that's cool too. So keep that in mind. The second thing that we need to know, weeding through, finding out the story, the second thing we always want to know is the as-is value. All right? As-is value. And do I have anybody who's CCIM in here? That stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member? No? Okay. It's a good financial class to take if you ever wanted to really sharpen your skill set and be a professional bean counter. With me, I've taken the class. I like it, but it's not for everybody. All right? It's not for everybody. I'll give you the condensed 1-minute overview instead of having to go and get this designatee for CCIM. And typically that's for brokers anyway, so you put it on your tagline, which shows that you're actually overqualified to do deep dive analysis, right? So the as-is value, how do we determine the as-is value and where do we go with that? Because there's so many ways to value it, right? So write this down. You can value it on dollar per square foot, That's net rentable square foot, NRSF, net rentable square foot. You can look at it at cost dollar per door. And a lot of people look, especially with multifamily, not so much self-storage, but for multifamily, a lot of these people, they look at dollar per door, and they also look at the net rentable square feet. The numbers don't lie. You guys are going to, Sherry, shut up, stop saying that. They don't. And that's what you guys want, is add zeros to your bank account. So check this out. This right here is what I refer to as my funnel, right? The simplistic nature of this, okay? GROS and S, right? All the gross income. That's everything that the property made. Now, I had trouble at the very start, and I consider myself a pretty sharp guy. But back when I was a young buck, just getting my legs, my financial legs, and that gentleman, by the way, his name's Ray, should speak with him with respect instead of that guy. Ray taught me something, and he said, look, I just want you to understand this quickly, okay? So get this, okay? You got all the gross income that comes in, then you get your itemized expenses. Once those are itemized out and you take away all the expenses, you're left with the net, the NOI divided by the purchase price is the cap rate. Get out there and find me a cap rate at 6%. And I said, what'd you just say? So I'm gonna break it down to you and tell you the story because I didn't get it. And he got frustrated with me. And he goes, I thought you were sharper than this. I said, come on, Ray, give me a break, man. He's like, all right, check it out. You're on a boat and you cast out a net and then you have your rope on the other side. The net drops and you pull the rope this way and all of a sudden you bring it back up and you bring it back in the boat. And you open up the net. Everything in there is the gross. That's everything that the property caught. That's the gross income. Now what you need to do is take out all those itemized expenses. Each property is going to have a different value of expenses. Some have different expenses than others. But for the most part, when you have your taxes and you have your insurance and you have your management costs and your utility expense, you minus out all those expenses, you're left with the net. And what's in the net? That's the NOI. That's the net operating income. So all your gross is here, and then you minus off your expenses, and that actually equals your NOI. And the formula that I just mentioned is your NOI, simple division, divided by whatever price you're paying, equals something. It equals your cap rate. A lot of people get this wrong, and if this is elementary to some of you that are already educated in this field, please be patient for everybody else so they can catch up. But this is very basic. Don't get hung up on the capitalization rate formula. It's a measuring stick that both our respectful brokers and investors that are out there use to value property. The higher the cap rate, the better for the buyer. The lower the cap rate, the better for the seller, okay? Remember that. So when you trade at a low cap, we buy at a high, trade at a low. Question? Right.
How do you manage that for figuring out the NOI? Because I've asked for tax returns before as well too, but we all know we rely on our tax returns, right?
Sure. And next time you ask for it, what's your name?
Oz.
Haas?
Oz, like Ozzy Osbourne.
Oz, got it. Cool, thanks Oz. Great question. That's part of the dynamic of what we're looking for, by the way, so you're right on track. We look for books are cooked. Let's go ahead and talk simplistic language, right? When the books are cooked, it means they're not taking good records. We recently closed a project. You know what the guy had his information on? Kid you not, index cards. Index cards. And my partner, Mark, that I closed the deal with, he said, I sat in his office. He did a site visit out to the property. He sat in his office and he sat there for an hour going through index cards. Why would he do that? Well, there's over $1.1 million in that deal. I'll tell you the answer in 1 second, okay? So when we look at this as is value, what we're gonna look at is we're gonna look at a property and we're going to have to use a gauge, right? We're going to use a gauge. We're going to use a swag. That stands for scientific wild ass guess, right? We're going to use a swag. But when we use this, we're going to use this to our advantage. And what we use, and now here comes some BS detectors ready to go off, right? Woo, about to go off. So check us out. We're going to use a 10 cap to understand the as is value, okay? 10 cap. Here's the simplistic nature behind this. When we look at these properties, our target buy is a 10 cap. If you would say to me, Terry, there's no possible way you can buy a 10 cap property. Well, I would tell you that the last, 4 dozen properties that closed are all on 10 cap or better. You know that deal that I just mentioned to you in Florence? I'm tying up 4 acres behind it for $650,000 and it's already approved and ready for development on a seller finance note with 15% down on a 25-year amortization. And I'm going to talk a little bit about finance after I get through some of these slides. We're going to talk about how you can keep your payments super low so you're cash flow positive. I just received on my phone a text message that came through from the manager, and she said, we just deposited $17,250 into your account, meaning wired it. My debt service is $11,800. That's my debt service. So that's positive cash flow at closing. That's pretty sick, right? Sick in a good way, right? We use a 10 cap. So what does this mean, and how can we simplify this together when I talk 10 cap? Here's a quick quiz for you, all right? If a property, and we always remember the NOI and the gross is always yearly. It's what? Yearly, all right, yearly. It's not monthly. We look at it monthly, and we look at our debt service, and then we look at our debt service after cash flow on a monthly basis, but everything is annualized. It's always annual, okay? So when we look at the NOI, and we show that it's 51,000 NOI, on a 10 cap, what's the value of the property? 510,000. So you don't even need a fancy pants calculator. Get it? 63,000 is worth what? 630,000, right? 110,000 is worth 1.1. 12,000, yeah, properties we buy are only bringing in 12 grand, right? It's worth 120,000. And that is our strike price. That's where we say this is where the as-is value is. Why I'm able to buy on 10 cap and buy property so aggressive with seller financing is the same reason and the same question that Oz, it's like it's married together. They don't qualify for bank financing, kind of like early Terry, right? I didn't qualify for bank financing. I had to get creative. Who here deals with lenders, or who's a lender in the room? Anybody? Right? So what do you guys want to see? Profit and loss, trailing 12 months, or even 24, right? You want to see rent roll. You want to see property history. You want to see exactly what the current occupancy is today. Well, what happens when I just have a bunch of index cards? It's not bankable. You guys aren't going to finance index cards. You know that as well as I know that. Heck, banks right now, the only time really loans are being made are to give money to people that don't need it, right? And I can fortunately say that I get recruited for loans all the time, and I'm like, I don't need your money. I don't need it. It's too expensive. And why it's too expensive? Because I can get cheaper money. Why? Because I do something called EBI. It's something that I created. It's called equity buy-in. And in equity buy-in, I got another wire transfer for 190,000 coming. And why I'm able to get a wire transfer coming for $190,000 is because I went and discovered a property. Like fire, I discovered it, right? Now all of a sudden I have this property. And I created the terms. I took it from a turkey that can barely fly, and I turned it into an eagle that soars. Because of the way I did the number manipulation, the way that I bought it, the price point that I bought it at, the terms that I negotiated, the non-recourse structure. Guys, there's things that I'm doing behind the scenes that I love to share with you, like creating seller finance notes where they're assumable and transferable, where somebody else can now jump into your shoes, and then you go ahead and you take your equity, meaning you cash out, and you let them run with the project. That's a really, really great opportunity. I did this deal in St. Augustine, Florida. I wasn't even in Florida for a couple of years, and I was in the Jacksonville Business Journal. If anybody wants the copy, I can give it to you. But they basically said, hey, this guy went, the broker, Eric, he ended up getting interviewed. He was through Prime Realty, moved over to Colliers International. But while he was at Prime, he got interviewed, and he said, you know, self-storage is so hot right now. This guy bought this property, sight unseen. He hired a drone guy to come do drone footage of the roofs. The property was full. It was mismanaged. He bought it for $480,000. He ended up bridging capital. It wasn't his capital. He ended up bringing the manager out, bringing third-party marketing management collection in, and I retraded it for the guy at $900,000 in 6 months. So I never even stepped foot on the property, and I cleared like $480,000 on it. So when you do an equity buy-in, it's a different scenario than repositioning and selling or wholesaling the paper, right? Through this transition of this last, whatever it's been, 8 years now, right? Since I bucked up and got back to it, I saw that there was a need for property. There was buyers that wanted property. There's people like you that are like, look, it's cool. You seem like a cool guy, but I just want the leads because I have money and I just want deals, right? And there's probably, who here is like that, right? Maybe you have a few bucks and you just want me to just toss a deal to you, right? So I started a platform called Commercial Buyers Club. And when I started Commercial Buyers Club, it was to bring people in, and I didn't realize how big it was gonna go. And now we have, there's ridiculous amounts of people on there. So what I do is a drip campaign to it. I'm really good with email marketing. And I'll drip a few emails, super basic, and just start vetting people. And then I send a questionnaire to them and they tell me exactly what it is that they want. Then we create a profile on that person, and I have a team of individuals that look after that. And then when we stumble into properties, like maybe you guys in the house buying business, you see a deal and you're like, this is like too rough, man. It's a handyman special. I don't want this deal. So what do? You toss it to somebody else and then they pay you for it. So I do the same thing, except now there's no effort to it. And that's something that's in play to wholesale projects. I wholesaled just this year alone, millions in property sight unseen. I tied one up in Wichita, Kansas for $700,000. It's right on Kellogg Drive. I'd never even been to Wichita. When I saw it, I was like, this is a monster deal, 350 units. I tied it up through this gentleman, Drew, through NAI Global for $700,000. That was a cash deal, but I knew my exit. My exit was to wholesale it. I wholesaled it to a team of guys that were out in Utah that have cash. People in Utah have a lot of money. They're in a tight niche, their little zone. And I said, well, the thing's worth $1.6 million. So what do you want to give me for it? We went back and forth. I said, I'm not taking anything less than 1.2. They came to me, they said, we'll close in 10 days, $1,050,000. I said, close in 5 days, $1,050,000. They said, okay. I made myself a chunk of money, 350 grand. I never saw the property. I didn't want to see it. We worked very hard on it in the office, seriously. I asked Margarita, who's on my team, right? Of course I brought in somebody named Margarita, right? And I said, Margarita, go ahead and put an OM together on this one. She put it together and we shot it out. 2 days later, the group from Utah came in 5 days thereafter. So we put these all on timestamps. We record these things because it's the art of the deal. So I like to say, how much money can I make and how fast can I make it, right? And so we have a little competition in office, and it's a lot of fun. I do have in-house acquisitions, so I don't solely rely on you folks if you happen to join my team. I don't sit around and just do nothing, right? I'm too good at what I do, and I say that respectfully. I'm not beating my chest, believe me. Like, I'm a normal guy. I check my ego at the door. I don't have an ego. Like, I'm not really a flashy guy. I don't, drive around in a real expensive car or anything like that. Well, it's kind of expensive, but nevertheless. I don't like to go too high profile because if you do, people, they follow you. So, as is value. You guys get that? NOI divided by purchase price equals the cap. So the cool thing about it is, and to answer your question, Oz, which relates to the next number, right? Which is number 3, right? So you got your ask, your as is, and then obviously your ARV. And a lot of you guys have heard this acronym ARV. It stands for after repaired value. And then there's ADV, which stands for after developed value. But the ARV, how do we get to the ARV, right? Like where are we going to go to get to this ARV? The after repaired value is when we look at it like it's completely vacant. And we do this in-house day in and day out, like every day. And I create like artwork, I call it, in my office in Malibu, right across from Pacific Coast. All my clients are welcome to come into the office. California's still a little crazy with COVID, but it's not so bad. They're starting to wise up, starting to be cool. I gave all my kids into Among Us. So we were sitting at the pool yesterday, and I gave them all kinds of tattoos with the tattoo pen on Among Us. He's like, yeah, give me some more. I said, all right. What's that? But yeah, this is kind of what my artwork looks like. So we'll sit there on my whiteboard just like this thing, and like all the time, like I'll just crunch numbers. And just go through it, and then I take snapshots of all of it. So I keep all my footnotes like on my phone. But there's probably 100 of these things in here or more. And so we'll sit there, and I'll put this whole story together. It's really good creation, man. We're all artists. We all are, and we're all actually brilliant, believe it or not. And the reason being is we only use 10% of our brain anyway, right? Isn't that what they say? and we always worry about things that really never come to fruition. Have you ever like lost sleep about something and all of a sudden the next day you're like, it never even happened, right? Because we create our own problems. We create our own situations because we're so brilliant, because we're bored. We really are. We're really bored. And then we'll create a problem. We'll agitate the problem. We'll get all flustered, right? Because it kicks our endorphins up so we get more oxygen and we can live longer. And then we solve all those problems. And we do this nonstop. We're like crazy humans, right? So what I do is I get into creation mode, and I really do call it art, and it's the art of the deal. And we're making a ton of money doing it. And the great thing about it is you don't have to have any degree. People always say, well, what license do you have? I go, well, I have 2 licenses. They go, really, what? I said, a driver's license and a marriage license. So what I do, Oz, is I'll take the property. Let's say it's 100 units. Our target, just so you guys know, and we're going to get, this is number 3, this is the ARV. Our target, so you guys know, and the reason why we don't have any competition, and I said earlier that it's a tough thing to live up to say, but really we're not competing against Wall Street, because Wall Street, they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in property, and huge plays. REITs, they don't want to even touch anything unless it's over 5 million. So what we'll do is we'll go buy a property in an area like Dothan, and then we'll go to an area like Abbeville, and another area like Taylor. Have you guys even heard of these places? Right? No, I haven't either. They're smart tertiary markets, but they're like over 3 to 10,000, 20,000 people. But the facilities are full. And then they're trading at an aggressive 8 cap. And there's still money in them because of the way we buy them. We tied one up in Abbeville at $385,000, $50,000 down, and the guy did a 60-month carry at 4.25% interest. Those are non-recourse, right? And then the other one we did in Dothan was at $550,000 with $50,000 down, and close to same terms, 5% interest on a 30-year AM. So sometimes we'll do interest only. I'll talk about that when we get into a little bit of a finance section. Sometimes we'll do interest only to keep our payment down, and we'll talk about the dynamic of why we do that. But not to get off topic of number 3, which is the R of the after repaired value. We just look at it as if the thing's totally vacant, and we'll just run a simple overview like this. And it'll look just like this, okay? Okay? And what we'll do is we'll go current rents, and then what we'll do is we'll go market rents. This is all the intel that you guys need to know to be able to understand if it's a deal. This is part of creation. See what I mean? And then what you have is something called your unit mix. So when you get that trailing 12 months, it tells you who's actually paying over the course of that 12-month period. The profit and loss talks about the profit and also the expenses, and you see your gains, right? And then you look at your rent roll, and now you know exactly who's occupying what. So we want to know exactly who's in unit 1, who's in unit 2, who's in unit 20, who's in unit 50. And once we have that rent roll and we understand exactly who's there, it's a power play for us. So we go ahead and we kick in the mix, whatever it happens to be. The one we just tied up was, there was a handful of 5x8s, there was 10x10s, there's 10x20s, and we had some other off sizes. There was like something weird, it's like a 10x30, a bigger one that's not so normal. So then what we do is we list exactly what it happens to be. So just for simplistic, let's say we have 25, 25, 25, and 25, right? Just to keep it simple here. And then what we do is we say, where are their current rents at? So if these guys are renting out here for say $50, these guys here are renting for 75, these guys are renting for 90, these guys are renting for 120. Then what we do is we simply just go on other websites that are out there. Look, it's free 90 free, right? Free 90 free, there's no cost, right? I'm not that funny, I know, it's okay though. Just go on neighboring websites, and then what we do is we make some simple cold calls. We say, what are your 10x10s rent for? Oh really, what are your 10x20s rent for? Yeah, the person on the other end of the phone, they're not like, are you a competitor? Like they don't care. They're making like $10 an hour at best. Like they just answer the questions. They're kind of robotic, you know? They're just like, sure. They just answer. And then the other beautiful thing is that most of these websites, when there are websites, they actually, if you go on their website and it's a halfway decent one, it'll actually list their sizes with their pricing. So you never even have to pick up the phone, right? Then what we do is we list exactly where their rents are and then where the current rents. So Oz, it doesn't matter what the occupancy is. We deal with property that's sitting at 10% vacancy, 20%, 50%, 70%. But here's the kicker. This is the secret sauce. Write this down. If you buy on the as-is value, as-is where-is, in its current state, in its current situation, in its current state on the as-is, and you buy that at a 10 cap, you're guaranteed to make money. 100%. Because even if you bought it and it was full and you bought it at a 10 cap and you knew what the market rates were and you were to raise the rents, you still bought it at a 10 cap. So what does that mean? It means that you need to understand a few things there. You need to know market rents, you need to know market occupancy, and market cap. If you nail all three of those in your quest of discovery, and all of a sudden you see that market rents are more like 70, 90, 110, and 160, and then you add the numbers, all you do is the simple mathematics. Now, we do use a certain expense ratio. On certain property types, there'll be different expense ratios. When you look at mobile home parks, it's insanity. One of my partners, Ray Spears, he's out in Franklin, Kentucky, just sold a property. He's been with me since 2009. He's been with me for a while. He amassed a portfolio of 3 mobile home parks. He just sold one. His earnings that he received is 700. I think it's like 710,000. And now he's doing a buy-in to come into properties I'd already had on the table. Okay. And he's letting me place that 700,000 into deals on a 1031 exchange. Okay. He's doing it in a retirement account and rotating the money in and out of the retirement account so he doesn't have to pay taxes on it. So it's a wonderful thing. I don't know how many of you guys have a retirement account. I fortunately was brought into opportunities to set up retirement accounts a very, very long time ago. So I've been watching mine grow. I'm not saying that to piss you off. Okay. I'm just saying that it's never too late. Especially in this business, it's never too late. Like, you guys could nail a deal in Florence and make yourself $2 million. That's the crazy thing. The guy never met me face to face. Never met me face to face. It was a cold call. We cold called him. I have a team in Vegas. A couple crusty old guys. It's okay. We talk to each other like that. Call me whippersnapper. I have these guys, and all they do is they sit there and they smile and dial. They're ex-stockbrokers. I don't know what they're drinking over there, but they're really good on the phone. Yeah, question?
Acronyms there, the MR, MO, and MC. I got market rate, market occupancy, but what was the
Market cap? Yeah, thank you, in case anybody else missed that. You guys don't be shy, I don't bite. You know, if you guys got questions, just raise your hand. It's all good. Market cap. So once we know what the property's gonna trade back at, this is what I call number manipulation. So we take the numbers and we say, all right, if we bought it at a 10 cap and it's pulling in 51,000 and the property's sitting, let's say, at 50% occupancy, right? Let's just call it 50 grand at 50% occupancy. Got it? Now, the average person would say, well, if you go ahead and fill the 100 unit, you're gonna make another 50 grand. Some would say. But don't forget you got your expenses. But just because you make more capital doesn't mean that your expenses go up, right? For the most part, the expenses are gonna be staying the same. Your taxes, your insurance, just because you got more people in there doesn't mean the insurance guy's gonna come and give you another bill. It's a beautiful thing by filling vacancy. And here's the kicker. So if somebody came to a broker and said, hey, this is what I want you to find. Find me something that doesn't look good, that needs deferred maintenance, that's close to vacant, and the books are cooked. You got any of those deals? Most brokers turn those deals down. It's not something that they want to add to their portfolio and field calls on. It's going to be a lowball offer, and they only eat what they kill, so they're not going to get this like high commission when someone's lowballing them, right? And that totally makes sense. I've had property that I tried to wholesale in the past. A buddy of mine, John Owens, out of Texas, and I called him and I said, John, I owned the only 2 properties in Teague, Texas, at South Dallas. One's 171 unit, one's 98, and I wanted to sell both of them. And I just was like, I'm not going to put the work into it. Like, it didn't warrant my time because it was the only 2 facilities. Literally, I was the big fish in the small pond, not the small fish in the big pond. And so I just wanted to off it and make myself a couple $100 grand and run, okay? He said, I won't list it. He said, I won't take the listing. I said, why? I said, don't you work on commission? He said, yeah, but I don't want to take the listing. He's like, I don't want to field the calls. He goes, why don't you get it up a bit? I can sell. It'd be easier for me to sell when it's stabilized than sell it in this current condition. And so he turned me down. So these deals are out there. Here's some statistics for you guys real quick. Statistics states that this is Storage Brokers of America. They state that there's over 50,000 self-storage facilities across the nation. right? We're not talking about corporate conglomerates. We're talking about mom and pop, individual operators, right? And how many of